now, Qatar. We know the situation here, don't we? Of course, they have been doing a lot of negotiation. They're quite close when it comes to Hamas. They've been doing some good work, I have to say, when it comes to working with them to get some hostages released and all the rest of it. But, of course, Qatar is home to many Hamas leaders, has been for quite a long time. Qatar also has fingers in a lot of pies here in the UK, and it's about to expand those tentacles, hundreds of millions of pounds to be precise, into Canary Wharf in London. Many people have said now, actually, that perhaps the UK shouldn't be doing more business with a country like Qatar when they are so close-knit with a terrorist organisation such as Hamas. What about you? What do you make to it?
Well, 150 years ago, if I can just bring a little bit of history in here, people would have said that about Britain as well. They'd have said, you're a country where people like Karl Marx and other revolutionaries can sit there in the British Museum Library writing their poisonous bilge, and plotting revolution against the Russian Empire, which many of them had escaped,
right.
And so on. And we'd say, yeah, because we're a free country. We're a free country, and people can, as long as they keep the law here, people can say and write what they want. And we would be regarded as the great leftist harbourer of terrorists in those days. But it was because we had an attitude of freedom. Qatar is basically a friend of this country. All right, so they've got Hamas there, but at least you know where they are, which is actually quite good. And even the Israelis need links to talk to Hamas at some stage. I know that they'll never talk to them publicly, but at some stages in the past, and before this event happened, they would have had links, conversations with Qatar at with Hamas at various stages. And it's good to know where people are, and you can have channels of communication. And I don't think Qatar is a poisonous state in any sense at all.
What gets me is the stinking hypocrisy of it. That, you know, we just exhibit double standards the whole time in this country as a matter of our foreign policy. We condemn China, not without reason. We condemn Iran, not without reason. We talk about certain countries being, you know, the axis of evil and language like that because of their appalling human rights records. And at the same time, we are very happy to trade with countries that themselves have got appalling human rights records and are guilty, when you look at reports from Amnesty or the like, are guilty of appalling human rights abuses, the likes of Qatar, the likes of Saudi Arabia. Now, I think that there's an argument to say, look, if a country, you know, it might be a dictatorship, it might have had a bad human rights record, but if it's going in the right direction, if the direction of travel is correct, then there's an argument to say, look, we should think about engaging with that country in a kind of diplomatic sense, in a trading sense, to help encourage them, you know, to come into the fold a little bit more. But where countries, I don't think, have got any interest in doing that sort of thing, I think Saudi Arabia is probably one of those countries, then it's hard to see why we should have such close relationships with some of those countries when, as I said, we condemn other countries who do exactly the same thing. So I just think, you know, when we hear politicians talk, Robin Cook famously talks, you know, in the 90s about if Labour ever came to power, it would have an ethical foreign policy.
Yeah, that was fatal.
I think most people in this country would like to see an ethical foreign policy. We've just never had
But he says it'd be fatal. Why?
Yeah, that was a huge mistake, and it's really damaged Britain. That Robin Cook put that in place, because we think that our job is to go around virtue signalling around the world, thinking it's going to have some effect. And of course we end up with total inconsistency as a result. I mean, one of the countries we wouldn't take investment from in that, if we were really insistent on human rights, is the United States. Well, they have executions. And that's contrary to the European Convention on Human Rights. We shouldn't touch their money with a barge pole. But of course we carry on, because that whole approach that our job is to go around uselessly condemning people and having no effect on them whatsoever and making ourselves look like pompous prigs around the world, surely that's run its course. Our ethical foreign policy is to do the best for the people of Britain. That's what the Foreign Office should be doing. Are you
saying, Daniel, that
and we should be trading. We should be trading with countries, in my view, irrespective of issues to do with human rights. We shouldn't be trading with them if trading with them is damaging our national security. There are things we shouldn't be selling to countries, high-tech things, things we shouldn't be buying from China, like, you know, their or their kit that they put in mobile phones, masks and all of that sort of stuff, because there are national security issues about it. But this idea that we're actually having some effect on making the world better because we're going around waving flags the whole time and shouting at people and looking idiotic. It's totally failed. It's run its course.
You can't, as a country, be a moral vacuum when it comes to these questions.
No, I don't.
It's
not a moral vacuum.
I don't think
the moral principle. The moral principle is that we're obliged to do the best for the people of Britain.
Excuse me. We don't do talking over on this programme because no one can hear. You've spoken.
I was trying to respond.
Go on.
You cannot be a moral vacuum, at least not if you want to maintain credibility and integrity on the international stage and, in fact, on the domestic stage as well. If you get a Prime Minister stand up one moment and say, you know, the Chinese authorities are absolutely wicked, look at what they're doing to the Uyghur Muslims, for example, look at what they're doing to women in Iran, look at these human rights abuses, but then says, oh, actually, you know, with Saudi Arabia, they do similar sorts of stuff, and Qatar does similar sorts of stuff, but we're going to stand back from that. We're not going to talk about that because we've got trading interests. Then your credibility and your integrity, I think, as a government, simply falls away. Look at Libya.
Well, I agree with you.
Look at Libya. Libya was an enemy of Britain in the 1980s. Look at Libya in terms of what it did in terms of support for the IRA, in terms of the Lockerbie bombing and its involvement in that.
About Libya.
And then Tony Blair is standing next to Gaddafi in a tent, looking as if they're best friends. You can't have a vacuous policy like
you are condemning, not my policy. You're condemning your own policy. I'm saying, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous what you're doing. There should be clear consistency. The foreign policy of this country should be conducted in the best interests of the people of this country. That's the moral principle it should rest on. And we should not be going around choosing between different countries, whether they're good or bad on that basis. That's what you want to do on a consistent basis.
You would fail to trade with, regardless of the regime, regardless of what's going on in terms of human rights. If we can earn a fast buck out of them, we should trade.
Not earn a fast buck. If we can trade with countries, if we can trade with countries profitably, we should do so, unless there are national security or other interests.
Regardless of what they do to their own people.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. We'll end on that note. Do you agree with that or not?